Hello, everybody. My name is Andre Sims, and the book that I chose was Sports Why Do People Love Them by Tim Delaney and Tim Manigan. Basically, the book is obviously about sports, but it also breaks down sports, what it's defined as, and what is actually considered to be a sport, as well as the history behind sports and the culture. So, one of the main questions the book asks is, what is a sport? Like, define a sport. And one of the people that it talked about the most was Harriet Edwards. And his definition of a sport was that it had to be an active based activity. It has history and tradition. Physically, you have to exert something into it. And there has to be rules and regulations. Officials and refs have to be present. And you have to obviously have two teams going head to head for a certain cause. So the one definition that sums all that up is an institutionalized, structured, competitive activity beyond the realm of play that involves exertion and the use of a competitive skill. So when you think of a sport, you can name off a couple of things or a couple of sports that fit this category: football, baseball, basketball, soccer, hockey. All that's easy. One thing that the book also highlighted was the difference between leisure time and a sport based activity. For instance, a leisure activity is something that you're not obligated to do. Like, you're free to do it whenever you want to. You don't have really any responsibility required to that activity. As completely different from a sport. Take it from me, an athlete who knows that there's a whole lot of work that goes into the behind the scenes of playing college football that a lot of people don't know. I mean, yeah, of course, working out and going to the games and stuff, but it's a lot of time off the field that we spend, doing other things to prepare us for them Saturday night games. And when I got to reading the book further along, it really made a lot of sense. Like, it broke down the types of play. Like, when you think about it, you can play jump rope, you can play hide and seek, you can play tag, but are these really organized activities? Like, are there refs out there controlling the game? No, it's just free, it's spontaneous. It's competitive, but it's not anything close to being a sport. Now, one of the points that I also read throughout the book was knowing the difference between an athlete and a physically active person. A lot of people would say they're athletes because they lift and they run and they swim and they do all this stuff. Um, that doesn't really fall into an organized sport. They do that on their own time. That's all fine and good. You're physically active, but I wouldn't consider that to be an athlete. Now, the book says an athlete is somebody who puts the majority of their time into a sport, developing their skills to perform come game day. So I want to be able to run faster. I want to be able to be stronger than my opponent. I want to be able to beat my opponent in the sport that I'm playing. And I want to have been heavily equipped with the tools that I need to go out there and play at the highest level. So that's the difference between a physically active person and an athlete. From there, the book talks about how physically surviving back when the cavemen were alive is kind of how sports games really start. If you really think about it, they had to be physically capable to survive back then, like running, jumping, hunting. Think about it. All the things that sports is all the things that sports requires of an individual, they kind of went through and started that whole thing, like football, running away from people, catching things, baseball, hitting things. You know, it sports can really be tied into how they tried to survive back. And really, that sums up the beginning of the book. It talks basically about how the definition of a sport is to be institutionalized and structured, and the different play and how the categories in play are spontaneous and organized, non-competitive and competitive, and the difference between being physically active and an athlete. So the middle portion of the book really goes into detail about the history of sports and how sports really began. And if you think about it, how did sports begin? You also really have to think about the area you're in. Like the book talks about how we as a people are socialized into sports. Like growing up, all I heard was football, 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 football. All I seen was football, talked about was football. My family was like just into football, and that's probably one of the reasons why I'm such a football fan. Like if you really think about it, kids who are raised around sports are more likely to be a part of a sports team or a sports activity later on in life. So, who are these people that are in your ear about sports every day, constantly, all the time? You have parents, you have families, teachers, coaches, peers, the community, even the media. And the book breaks down all of these different types of influences in your life. And basically, that's what shapes and helps people kind of develop the love for the game that they have. The love of sports was developed at a young age. Think about it like that. When you think about it like that, it really puts a lot of things in perspective when it comes to why people love sports so much. Like I said earlier, me personally, I believe that my love of football came from all these people in my ear talking about football, displaying football on TV, um, going to football games. So when we say sports is institutionalized, it's basically a mirrored reflection of our society, and it really has a powerful impact on us and how we live. And towards the end of the book, it kind of gets more into the fans' perspective, and not even the fans, but it also gets into how athletes continue their love for the sport, but during high school it kind of picks up. So you see kids play sports at a young age, like recreational basketball, football at little league parks. That's love for the game, but when it gets to a certain point, it starts to pick up. Like it's a business, in a certain and to a certain extent it is a business. Like money is to be made, and even at the high school level, the book talks about how training for high school athletes picks up. Playing for a goal, the goal is potentially to get a scholarship, and not only are you doing all this, but you have to have the grades to be able to do all this. So when I talked about how people don't really see the behind the scenes of college football, well, the book actually goes into that as well. But to piggyback on sports fans, now the book really goes into detail about the fans, because I mean the title is why we love them. And if you think about that question, you kind of put your mind on the spectating of the game, you know, all the activities that come with spectating. You think of fans, you think of crazy, um, out in the parking lot grilling type fans, and fans come in all shapes and sizes. Um, the one thing that it broke down to the T was tailgating. And me personally, I never really been a part of a live tailgating experience because I've always been playing. But from what I hear and what I see on TV, man, people go all out for tailgating. Like the fans are crazy. The most inspired people, the people that love the game so much, um, that probably had a desire to play the game and just didn't, you know, have the time or the talent. But the book really goes into detail about how fans are viewed and the different types of fans. You have bandwagon fans, you have fans that go all out, you have, people on the fence, like, I watch sports, but I don't really watch sports. The book really breaks down all this, and I found it interesting. Last but not least, the book ends by letting us know how important media is when it comes to relaying that message that sports gives to us. we crave sports as individuals. We want sports, and the media really does a good job with getting us or giving us the thing that we thirst for the most. And it shows in TV. It shows on the TV. It shows in video games, computers. The media does an outstanding job with dishing out sports to people. And that was the last thing that the book really talked about. And hopefully, from what I talked about, everybody can understand basically what the book was about in a generalized aspect. And for the most part, I enjoyed reading this book, and I hope you had a good understanding of what it said through me. So, thank you.